who I love.
Yeah.
And I was shocked to see that many people who I loved.
For most of her life, Patti LaBelle sang about love with a voice powerful enough to shake arenas, yet spoke about her own desire with careful restraint. That wasn't shyness. It was intention. Patti LaBelle never treated attraction as gossip or conquest. When she acknowledged being drawn to a man, it was never about lust alone. It was about connection, emotional, spiritual, and deeply human. The kind that lingers long after the applause fades. Over the years, Patti has hinted at a handful of men who moved her in ways music alone could not. Men who challenged her, comforted her, unsettled her, or simply understood her without explanation. This is not a list meant to sensationalize. It's a portrait of how a woman who gave everything to love learned to recognize it when it appeared and when to step back. 6 men, 6 moments of truth, and each reveals a different side of Patti LaBelle that the stage never fully showed. Number 1, Marvin Gaye. When 2 wounded souls recognized each other, Patti LaBelle didn't describe Marvin Gaye as a crush. She described him as someone she understood. Their connection grew out of shared sensitivity rather than spectacle. Marvin carried a quiet fragility beneath his sensual image, a man torn between faith and desire, tenderness and turmoil. Patti recognized that conflict immediately. She had lived it herself, pouring emotion into music while protecting her private self from collapse. What drew her to Marvin wasn't his fame or allure. It was the way he listened, the way he seemed to feel everything too deeply, as if the world moved through him without filters. Patti once suggested that Marvin didn't need to explain himself around her. He could simply exist. That intimacy mattered. In Marvin, Patti saw a mirror not of romance, but of vulnerability. Their bond lived in long conversations, mutual concern, and the unspoken agreement that neither needed saving. Desire here was gentle, almost reverent, shaped by empathy rather than pursuit. But Patti also understood the danger. Marvin's inner battles were relentless, and love alone couldn't quiet them. She kept her footing, even as affection deepened. To be drawn to someone doesn't mean surrendering to their storm. With Marvin Gaye, Patti LaBelle learned that attraction can be profound without being possessive, and that sometimes the most honest connection is the one that knows when to stop. Number 2, Prince. Genius, control, and the line she wouldn't cross. Prince fascinated Patti LaBelle for a different reason entirely. Where Marvin was open and raw, Prince was precise, controlled. He knew exactly who he was and how far his power reached. His artistry wasn't just musical, it was total. Sound, image, sexuality, silence, everything moved on his terms. That certainty was magnetic. Patti admired his fearlessness, his refusal to be boxed in, his command of desire without apology. Prince didn't ask permission to be provocative. He authored it. For a woman who had fought her own battles for autonomy, that self-definition was deeply attractive. But Patti was never dazzled into submission. She sensed the cost of orbiting a personality that intense. Prince's world demanded allegiance, and Patti valued sovereignty too much to give it up. Attraction, in this case, sharpened her clarity rather than clouded it. She could acknowledge the pull without stepping inside the current. What made Prince compelling to Patti wasn't the promise of closeness, it was the boundary itself. She respected the brilliance, felt the charge, and chose distance. That choice says everything about how Patti understood desire, not as something that overrides judgment, but as information, a signal to be read carefully. In Prince, she saw genius, and she also saw where she needed to stand. Number 3, Luther Vandross, intimacy without definition. If the first 2 connections carried tension and restraint, Luther Vandross offered something else entirely: safety. Patti LaBelle's relationship with Luther was deeply intimate, but never confined by labels. They shared trust, affection, and emotional closeness that didn't need to be explained to outsiders. There was no performance here, only understanding. What Patti cherished in Luther was his gentleness, his respect, the way he created space rather than claiming it. In an industry that often equated masculinity with dominance, Luther offered care without conditions. That, to Patti, was profoundly attractive. Their bond defied easy categories. It wasn't about physical pursuit, nor did it require it. Desire lived in shared laughter, mutual protection, and the knowledge that vulnerability would be met with kindness. Patti often spoke of Luther as family, and that word carried weight. This kind of attraction challenged conventional expectations. It suggested that intimacy doesn't need spectacle, and closeness doesn't need conquest. For Patti, acknowledging Luther's place in her life meant honoring a form of desire rooted in trust rather than tension. Together, these first three men reveal a pattern. Patti LaBelle wasn't drawn to surface charm or fleeting excitement. She was drawn to depth, whether it arrived as shared pain, controlled brilliance, or unwavering gentleness. And the next three will complicate that picture even further because they introduce ideals, intellect, and inner conflict that test where attraction ends and wisdom begins. Number 4. Sam Cooke, the man who represented stability. Sam Cooke represented something rare in the world. Patti LaBelle came up in intention. He wasn't just gifted, he was disciplined. Sam understood the business, respected his craft, and carried himself with a sense of purpose that extended beyond the stage. To Patti, that combination was quietly irresistible. Attraction didn't come from danger or unpredictability, it came from reliability. Sam Cooke moved through the world with clarity. He knew where he was going, and more importantly, why. In an industry full of brilliance undone by impulse, Sam offered a vision of adulthood. He balanced artistry with responsibility, confidence with courtesy. Patti admired how he treated people, how he listened before speaking, how he seemed grounded even as fame surrounded him. Her attraction to Sam wasn't dramatic. It didn't burn. It settled, and that mattered. Patti has often said that stability doesn't get enough credit. In Sam Cooke, she saw the kind of man who could love without chaos, who didn't mistake intensity for depth. That steadiness was powerful, especially to a woman who understood how exhausting instability could be. Sam represented the life that could be built, not just the moment that could be felt. Number 5. Stevie Wonder, connection of the mind and spirit. With Stevie Wonder, attraction took on a different shape entirely. Patti LaBelle was drawn not by physical presence or mystique, but by intelligence of the heart. Stevie possessed a sensitivity that reached beyond sound, an ability to feel people fully and respond without judgment. Around him, Patti felt seen rather than evaluated. Their connection was rooted in mutual respect. Conversations flowed easily, often circling back to faith, purpose, and the responsibility that comes with influence. Stevie listened deeply, asked thoughtful questions, and never rushed intimacy. For Patti, that attentiveness was rare. What made Stevie attractive wasn't romance, it was resonance. He understood vulnerability without trying to control it. He offered compassion without expectation. In a world that often demanded performance even in private, Stevie allowed space for authenticity. Patti admired his emotional intelligence as much as his musical genius. This was attraction without tension, without ambiguity, without the need to define. Patti has always believed that some connections are meant to nourish rather than consume. Stevie Wonder belonged firmly in that category. He reminded her that desire doesn't always need urgency, it can live quietly in shared values and mutual care. Number 6. Al Green, desire caught between flesh and faith. Al Green brought contradiction into the room. He was undeniably sensual, his voice, his presence, his ability to make longing sound holy. But he was also deeply conflicted, torn between physical desire and spiritual calling. That internal struggle was exactly what drew Patti LaBelle's attention. Patti recognized the battle immediately. She had watched many men wrestle with fame, temptation, and identity. But Al's conflict was different. It was sincere. He wasn't pretending to be pure, nor was he surrendering completely to impulse. He was searching. That search was compelling. Attraction here wasn't about fulfillment, it was about tension. Patti felt the pull, but she also felt the warning. Al Green's world was one of extremes, and stepping too close meant being caught between devotion and desire. Patti chose awareness over fantasy. She has spoken about how faith complicates attraction, not by eliminating it, but by demanding honesty. Al Green forced her to confront a truth she already knew. Some desires arrive not to be acted on, but to be acknowledged and respected from a distance. In Al, Patti saw both temptation and transformation, and she knew the difference mattered. In the end, Patti LaBelle's story is not about who she wanted, it's about how she chose. Across decades in an industry that often confused desire with entitlement, Patti moved differently. She listened to attraction without surrendering to it. She honored connection without letting it erase her boundaries. Each man who stirred something in her revealed a different truth. Vulnerability can be powerful, brilliance can be dangerous, stability can be seductive, and faith can complicate even the deepest longing. What makes Patti LaBelle's honesty so compelling is its restraint. She never framed desire as conquest or regret. She framed it as awareness, an understanding of what draws us in, and why wisdom sometimes means stepping back. In a world that often rewards impulse, her story reminds us that discernment is a form of strength. If this story made you reflect on the choices you've made or the ones you didn't, share your thoughts in the comments below. Like this video if you appreciate stories told with depth, respect, and honesty. And subscribe to the channel for more untold reflections on music, legacy, and the lives behind the legends. Because some stories don't shout, they stay with you and quietly change how you listen.